And what I want to talk to you tonight is the mainstream media. What on earth are they doing? Some of you might have realised that various people at various stages at times have been pointing out things that have been going on. So, for example, where did COVID come from? Do you remember that whole Wuhan lab? Dare anyone suggest that actually COVID might have originated in a lab in Wuhan? You were almost laughed out of town. Now, fast forward. And guess what? Of course, mainstream media are now admitting perhaps that was indeed the case. Then we move on to the whole lockdown, the COVID. Do you remember asking innocent questions like, a death from COVID? Was it from COVID? Because of COVID? Or what? Are these lockdowns doing more harm than good? Again, you were called, lashed out in fact, for being called a COVIDiot. And now, of course, we're seeing the mainstream media catch up, asking themselves the questions about with versus from, lockdowns, the harms that they caused, monumental mistakes on a global scale. That was in the Daily Mail. Brings me on nicely to Hunter Biden. Do you remember anyone daring to criticise or even talk about the laptops, the emails? Again, conspiracy, so they said. Shut down, so they did. And what's happening now? Well, lo and behold, it's been confirmed that some of the rumours about the emails and the laptops were indeed true. Again, Sleepy Joe, anyone dared to criticise Joe Biden again? Shut down you were, criticised you were. What's happening now? You guessed it, the mainstream media have decided to play catch-up. We're seeing a whole plethora now of articles, people distancing themselves from some of the things that Sleepy Joe is saying. So well done, mainstream media. You're getting there in the end. And another story that's caught my eye today, P&O Ferries. The conversation rumbled on. Now, I admit I am indeed a capitalist myself, but I'm a fan of responsible capitalism. And what P&O Ferries did, making these 800 people redundant on a Zoom call, whilst it might have been a sign of the times, it was appalling behaviour. So what do? Well, of course, we've seen select committees, we've seen jumped up politicians and the rest of them acting in a way that if I was the CEO of P&O Ferries, I would have told them to go do one. But he didn't, of course. The CEO sat there, put himself through a humiliating ordeal, answering various different questions, admitting that he cut out the unions because, quite frankly, he knew that they were never going to admit to anything or agree to anything that he wanted them to do. But the thing that's given me cause for concern is how many people have been demanding that the government steps in and nationalises P&O Ferries. I mean, I have to press pause for thought here. Because those people, and maybe you're one of them, that shout anytime anything goes wrong, quite frankly, and demands that the government steps in and fix it all, nationalise, they say. I wonder, have you thought about this? P&O Ferries recorded £100 million loss. So if you're one of those that want to nationalise P&O Ferries, do me a favour, explain to me why we, the taxpayer, should pick up a failing private sector business. Why should we pick up the bill for £100 million of losses? I can't think of a single reason. Can you? And do you remember when GBNews first launched? We used to talk about advertisers, didn't we? Ikea was one. And in June last year, some of you may recall, when Ikea took to Twitter. People were there, you know how it went by now. People that didn't like the idea of GBNews. And I say the idea, by the way, because GBNews hadn't even launched when people started crying about what GBNews may or may not be. Lambasting kind of brands, doing pylons, let's face it, doing pylons on social media, demanding to know why some brands were advertising on GBNews. Ikea was one of the ones that responded. I remember them putting a tweet out, actually, that said the following. Ikea has not knowingly advertised on GBNews. We have safeguards in place to prevent our advertising from appearing on platforms that are not in line with our humanistic values and vision. To side with the many people. They added, we're in the process of investigating how this may have occurred to ensure it won't happen again in the future, and we've suspended paid daily advertising. In the meantime, well, I've got to say, I started thinking about these humanist values and being on the side of many. Some of you may recall that this very same Ikea in 2021 was ordered by a French court to pay a €1 million fine for spying on its French staff. They were found guilty of improperly gathering and storing data on its employees. And now, this humanistic brand on the side of the many has had to apologise again after bosses, get this, inadvertently filmed staff using the toilets at work. They installed CCTV above the stalls. Well, above the toilet, should I say. The furniture giants have published the findings into the probe. They've basically been looking at surveillance cameras placed above 10 bathrooms at a distribution centre in Peterborough. I mean, come on now, what can I say? What a humanistic brand Ikea is, and I'm so pleased it is indeed on the side of the many.